All right. Hello, everyone. This is Randy's World. This is Tea Time, a new show where we're just going to talk today about relationships and intimacy and my goal of bringing men and women back together here in our culture. We have Erin Berry here. She's a relationship and intimacy coach. How you doing, Erin?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's just get right into it. Wanted to know, since I haven't met you before, I know nothing about you. Where did you grow up, and what was your childhood like?
Let's dive right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I'm native to Colorado, actually. So I grew up in South Denver. And I would say that my childhood was like pretty typical, middle class, two parents and a brother and a cat.
Did you ever live anywhere else?
I have lived in Florida and Hawaii. In my adult
How long
years.
for Florida? I was there for like 17 years.
Oh, I did not make it that long. I made it to
What part?
St. Augustine.
Okay, cool. I was in Lakeland. So like, what are some maybe hardships that you overcame, like on your way to becoming the woman that you are now?
Oh, well, I was like, wow, not really anything all that interesting in childhood, but really in my adult life, I ended up getting divorced about 8 years ago, which was kind of a huge catalyst for what I do now because I went into studying intimacy and relationship afterwards, trying to figure out why I had chosen the partner I had and what I had done that I did not want to repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And so just continued my learning and teach what I learned pretty much real time.
Okay, yeah. For me, I guess my parents got divorced when I was like 13, 14, and that started like the investigation for me, like why did they go wrong and what could they have done to keep it together? And then several of my relationships long term failed as well. And so they weren't marriages, but 4 years living with someone that felt like it. 5 years, 4 years, 2 years, I had a couple of long ones. And so each time I would get back to the drawing board and try to find out what happened and learn the tools, I think now, maybe hopefully make something last.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So what do you see as some of like the major fears that women carry heavily in today's world? What are they afraid of in relationships?
I think women are, in general are waking up and really looking at what they want in relationship and questioning what they've known to be true. I think we're kind of moving out of this like feminist point of view, most of us, some of us are not, into a way of being where we're trying to figure out what it is we actually want in a relationship. I don't think women really need necessarily to be supported anymore in the same ways that we have before. And so I think some of the fears that I hear, at least from my clients, is finding someone who actually wants to grow and evolve with them. They're afraid of being met by partners in that growth way, being supported, keeping their sovereignty, being able to be individual people and yet still, have a partner that they feel safe to support them.
Yeah, and you hinted on like what do women want and they're not sure. And I think that's men and women both. And I just think it's real important that you guys kind of figure out what you want and then you could tell each other and see if it's even a common goal. Like when you're getting together, you should have some sort of a common goal or something to work towards together. Otherwise, if one person wants to travel, the other person wants to make a bunch of money and work, you're going to end up probably clashing, I think, with each other, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I think communication is like the key. I was just talking to a friend about this last night. I was like, you know your values,
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to state those? You know your non-negotiables. Are you willing to walk away if they're not aligned? Do you even know what your purpose is for relating? I think so often people are like, I'm supposed to be in partnership, but really they don't even want a relationship. They think, they want somebody, but like you said, they want to travel or they actually don't want the responsibility or they're looking for someone to complete them. I mean, there's so many reasons.
Yeah. And do you think you should be a little bit flexible, like as a woman, like give up a little bit of what I want to like serve or to surrender? Or like, do you think you should be like, if you have a masculine goal, and I say masculine goal because like career driven, to me is more of a masculine goal. Like if you're like a strong career woman, maybe should you give up a little of that if you find a strong man, or what do you think on that?
Well, I mean, I think just talking masculine and feminine energies, I think the feminine desires to relax. I know we were kind of talking about this ahead of time a little bit. Um, I most of the women I know, are business owners because that's what I do, right? So I'm in the entrepreneur world, and really, there's this way of operating in our society that's very masculine that kind of pushes us that direction. I think most women are getting to the point where they want to reconnect with that feminine side of themselves and learn how to relax. So I'm like, is it really giving up what they want? I don't know. I think it's a compromise on both sides, right? In a
Yeah.
relationship.
And do you think like it's because it's expensive to live here, or like what are the reasons that women just end up um, forgetting about the relationship and just going straight into like, all right, I got to work and make this happen?
Oh, I think that's like society. I think that's the patriarchy. We're
Yeah.
kind of told that's how we have to do it. Um, and I don't know. I think most of us have our purposes here on this planet, and some of those are tied to careers. So that's one of the reasons that women work, or they have to. Like a lot of the women I talk to, there's no choice but to do that. A lot of them are single moms, myself included, and so yeah, we just got to do what we got to do. But I think that then puts us in a very masculine way of being that.
Yeah. And I think it even goes back to like high school. And I remember just like how college focused everyone was. And even the parents of the women are like, you need to get good grades and go to school and do all of these things that all the men are doing too.
Yeah.
So it's just like there's been no pattern break ever since like you're old enough to start dating, it seems like.
Yeah. And I think we're kind of given mixed messages. Like, I don't think that I received, even though I was the first woman in my family to go to college, I would still receive the conditioning of just be supported. And the problem with that is the man I ended up marrying didn't value that. And
Right.
so even though I was a stay-at-home mom taking care of our kids, there was still this like pressure to like it wasn't enough. I had to contribute in a way of like a 40-hour a week corporate job.
Yeah, right on. And so like, do you think there's a problem with women trusting men for some reason?
I think so. I mean, just based off of their own like experiences, for one thing, or what they've been taught, by either caretakers or other women, that maybe it's not necessarily fully safe to trust men, and then they go out in the world and they have these relational experiences and realize, oh yeah, it isn't safe, right? Like, I don't know that men are actually creating a lot of safety for us.
Yeah, and I seen like as my parents divorced, my dad kind of like left. So I think like as a woman growing up, my sister, I don't know if it affected her, but you can't really trust the man if you see your dad left the relationship. So that could already cause trauma. I think trauma probably the biggest reason that like there's a lack of trust.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us have some sort of trauma from something our caretakers did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's as many men out there with abandonment wounds as women, but that does seem to be a common theme. And then you take it into relationship and we self-abandon, right? That's how it shows up.
Or self-sabotage or like.
Yeah, it's either self-abandon or self-sabotage. And yeah, we just keep repeating those cycles.
So what do you mean by self-abandon? Like kind of abandon your own needs and wants and goals for the man, or?
Well, like I said, it's not necessarily just women doing this. However, I work mostly with women and I feel like they mostly are the ones that end up doing this. But yeah, it's like they're either not asking for what they need or their needs are not being met. And they're the ones that are in some way, shape, or form giving up what they need or what they desire in life for their partner, just to be in partnership.
Yeah. So what do we call that? Like a trauma bond? Or like a codependent relationship?
Yeah. Any of those. Yeah.
All right. So then if we're in that situation where we have trauma running the show and we're trauma bonded or codependent, and I would call that the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine. And then you end up either weighing too heavily as a man on the feminine side or too heavily on the masculine side as a woman. What are some ways that we can kind of like become aware of our masculine and feminine energy so we can kind of take some control of that?
I mean, this is a topic I think we're both talking about a lot right now. I like to consider it like, how do we integrate ourselves? Because we both have feminine and masculine polarities within ourselves. And so it's really looking at and feeling into what your natural set point is. There's a lot of misinformation about polarities out there, like we're supposed to be balanced and it's supposed to be 50-50, and that's not necessarily true. Like for me personally, I'm probably closer to 80% feminine, 20% masculine. But one of the things I've noticed as I've really embodied my feminine nature is if I'm not in right relationship with my masculine, then I'm expecting a man to meet that. And when I'm doing that, that's when I tend to attract somebody who is unintegrated. I can't remember the word you said, not toxic, but
Wounded.
Wounded. Yeah. Yes, that's a better word.
The
for
wounded
that.
masculine.
Yeah. And, and men do the same thing. Like I have definitely related with men who weren't in right relationship with their feminine. And what happens then is the masculine can't hold us. And to me, when I think of the energies, I think of the masculine as like the banks of the river. And the feminine is the wildness that can flow within that containment system. And we want that safety and that security.
Yeah, I like that. I think of feminine in regards to flow and nature and anything that's constantly moving. And then I think of the masculine too as like the rock, the solidness, the something that's never changing. As in like a masculine could hold the calmness while the woman gets wild and emotional.
Yeah.
And to see past the emotions to actually look at what the real intentions are behind.
And one of the things that I talk a lot about with the women that I work with, like most women are disconnected from that wildness that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And it is a part of us. And it's actually part of our like birthright to have this like primal side to us, but society has kind of told us it's not okay. And so what happens is we end up relating with men who can't hold that space for us. We end up getting called crazy, because we're being misunderstood. Because if someone's not in touch with their own emotions and their own wildness, then that's going to feel really out of control for somebody.
Yeah. And so when they're not in touch with the wildness, do you think they just shut down or just, what do you think would be the reaction in an argument then if she's not in touch with like her inside or wildness?
Well, I think it shows up as like frustration and anger in women.
Mm-hmm. And then, so like a tantrum with no actual direction of like, hey, this is what I need to get fixed here.
Yeah. I mean, so many people, be another podcast completely, right? But are not connected with their emotions. Mm-hmm. So that's a big part of it, right? A lot of women are afraid to feel the depth of their sadness, even though it's our birthright to be like in touch with the deep ocean of sadness. Like it's actually one of our gifts.
Yeah.
And I think for men, how it shows up is it's whatever their natural trauma response is. So they're either going to go in a fight or freeze or fawning.
Anger is popular, I guess.
Yeah.
In that case for the wounded masculine.
Yeah, because it's just a mirror to their own integrated wild feminine side they're not in touch with.
Mm-hmm. So then how can you shift the energy? So I think the first step is being aware that you do have both the masculine and feminine energies. And now in relationships, you want polarity, which is when one person's the masculine dominant, the other one should be the feminine dominant. At least when you come together, you want to have some polarity in order to not be annoyed with each other and feel that tension between each other. And I could even feel it now, like in my chest, mm-hmm. When I'm like around my partner and she's in her masculine and arguing with me, I just feel turned off and I feel it in my chest. And I'm like, okay, we need an energy shift here. If there's any like sparks going to fly.
And I think there is a dance. Like sometimes you might be more in your feminine and she might be in her masculine. But I think what you're talking about is we tend to just naturally go to that place because that was our conditioning. Mm-hmm. And so it really does take time to work with and start to actually feel like what it feels to embody. Like for me, that's one of the questions I've been asking women recently is what does it even feel like to be in your feminine? Mm-hmm. I love the responses, but it's like, question mark? Don't even know what that is. You know what I mean? And then to also be in right relationship with it, like I said. So I've been working a lot with women just this week actually around how can they be in right relationship with their inner masculine? We're talking about things that happen between the polarity as well. a lot of times women are being defeminized. A lot of times we are emasculating men, and we're not meaning to. We're just totally misunderstanding how the opposite operates.
Yep. And I have a good book for the men and women, really. It's called Enlightened Sex by David Dita, which really breaks down the masculine and feminine energies. And then it goes into polarity and it goes into all of this stuff for like 15 hours.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great book to start. Would you have like a book too that you'd recommend for either men or women?
Absolutely. Alison Armstrong does a lot of work around this, and she's got one called the Queen's Code, which really helps explain to women how men are not women misbehaving badly, but how they operate differently and what languaging works to actually communicate with them.
Now, can a man help a woman soften into the feminine? Like, I know there's ways she can shift on her own, but is there some things maybe a man can do that can do?
I mean, the main thing is creating safety. And I would say that is like the number one thing for myself.
And I hear that a lot. And I think I've seen it where the wounded feminine doesn't know what the safety is. And so no matter how safe the man may be, his character may be great, she still doesn't surrender into the relationship because she's saying the same thing. I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. But what is like safety for a woman? What should she be looking for so she doesn't miss it?
So safety isn't just physical. I think that's where people get really lost. There's all these layers of safety. I would say the number one that I work with the most is emotional safety. So if the woman that's relating has had any sort of trauma, like relationally in the past, basically her nervous system is going to be on alert and is not going to soften very easily, right? And so a lot of the work is actually within yourself to actually attune to your nervous system and create safety for yourself. You can't expect someone else to make you feel safe and help. You're making yourself feel safe.
And I think there is a few things like I would add because the man, in order to create safety, it has to come to his character. One of the things a man could do is be strongly rooted on his mission, which means he's going to be able to take care of the woman and create like the actual physical safety by putting a roof over their head, and if he's in good shape, he could protect her from other men, which is just the very basic level. Otherwise, it could be where he's in control of his emotions and doesn't fly off the handle when the woman has a problem with him or one of his behaviors or something like that. But yeah, I'm trying to think of some more ways, but I know that this is like one of the biggest things for the relationship to last is that the safety needs to be there for her to really surrender into the relationship. And when I say surrender, I just mean like, I think guys naturally in our human forms, we're different. Like there is no equality in the human form. And there is equality in the soul behind the human where it's like, we're all divine and equal in that way. We are all an aspect of God, or God is within us. And so when it comes to the human form, guys are actually stronger physically. Unless I'm not talking about outlier situations, but stronger. Usually we're coming from a place of rational thinking rather than emotional thinking. So we should be trusted to make big decisions. And if we're built physically for labor and we're doing a lot of work, we're taking care of the bills, there's some decisions that a woman should trust the man to make. Like where should we live? Where should we work? Those things kind of fall heavier on the man because if we're just going on the woman's emotion, she may change that often, and it wouldn't create stability for making a family. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think that's only like a small part of the population in relationship now.
Yeah.
Like I would say, intuition comes into play then for women as well. Like even though it is emotional, it's also like we know. And if we're like living from that place, then it's going to direct us, right? And I think that also allows us to trust.
Yeah. And so I think then it comes down to defining your roles in a relationship and actually using each other to um, offset each other's weaknesses and so forth. So if the man is a great caretaker and he's making a bunch of money and he's strong in his work, and the woman is kind of new in her career, I think like so where we're going to go based on work is kind of on the man then, because they've decided like, hey, you're going to be the one that's going to pay the bills no matter what here. Like I may be able to help if something goes wrong, but you're in charge of making sure we're okay. And so you decide that role, and then that frees the woman from the weight of empire on her shoulders, and it allows the man to lead in that regard. So that's what I'm talking about, surrender.
Mm-hmm. I mean, listening to you, I'm just thinking polarity, though, doesn't necessarily mean that the masculine would be the man, right?
Yeah, and it could be that the feminine, the woman is the more masculine one, and she picks a feminine partner, and she's making all the money. Then that's her role now, and maybe you can decide that together. We're like, hey, she's making 100,000 a year. You're kind of on your way, so it's more important that if she gets the job somewhere, that maybe he's going to follow, right? It could go reverse like that.
I'm even just thinking if it wasn't going reverse, that she was the one who, like, whatever she, was her career was in, made more money, but she was still the more feminine. Then there's like figuring out that balance as well, right?
Yeah. Or if like she wants some freedom from that empire role, then he's going to have to step up. And it's going to be like, how can I support him to step up and take some of this weight off of me?
Yeah.
And that's just really working together as a couple.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think many couples have created agreements with one another, which is like one of the most important things we can do in partnership.
Yeah. I think it goes the same in business. Like if you don't have organization and leadership roles and things like that, you're really just missing out on some of these ways that you can have closer bonds with each other and take it to like bigger levels as far as the relationship goes.
Yeah.
All right. So, what else we got here? What are some maybe upcoming events or virtually or locally? So we're both in Colorado here. So
yeah.
Do you host some events here locally?
I do. Well, right now I've got one coming up online. That's a workshop, or it's the doorway to the sacred feminine. So that's a 5-day workshop for women. It's also going to lead into a larger program. But I also do workshops and retreats here. So I lead in-person Tantra workshops. Next month, I'll be leading a Tantric date series here with another Tantric friend of mine. And then I've got retreats down at Joyful Journey, Hot Springs, and there's going to be another one this fall.
Joyful Journey, where's that?
It's in the San Luis Valley, so kind of between Salida and New Mexico.
Okay.
You know that little stretch right there.
And how about anything in the Denver area?
Denver, that will be the Tantra date nights for now. And I don't even know yet what else I've got.
Is that for singles or couples or both?
That will be singles, but I probably will also be doing a relationship type retreat here locally, probably later this spring. That's what I mean.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So if they want to find you and join you on these retreats and workshops, where could they look you up, and how do they find Erin Bliss? I mean, Erin Berry Bliss.
Yeah. So it's just that simple. My website is erinberrybliss.com.
Okay.
My Facebook is Erin Berry Bliss. And then Instagram is at Erin Berry Bliss. So Erin Berry Bliss everywhere.
Yeah, look her up. So my goal here is just for more men and women to come together and work together in harmony. I just want to encourage everyone to spread the love. Thank you for coming, Erin.
Yeah, this is great.